Karsky?
Yes.
Kiley?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Item 44.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a construction manager at-risk agreement between the City of Sioux Falls and Henry Carlson Company for construction manager at-risk services for the Sioux Falls Administrative Office Building, along with other documents, amendments, change orders, or other instruments as may be deemed necessary and appropriate, consistent with the terms of the agreement.
Sue, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Sue Kwan-Beckett, Director of Central Services. I'm here tonight with Karen Leonard from the City Attorney's Office and Tracy Turbach from the Finance Office. We're going to do a short presentation about the Construction Manager at Risk contract for the new City Administrative Building. The parties involved in the contract consist of the City of Sioux Falls and the construction manager, Henry Carlson Company. The city went through a competitive RFP and interview process with 3 local firms, and Henry Carlson Company was determined to be the best fit for this project. And we do have a representative from Henry Carlson here tonight who may be speaking with you later. We also have a representative from Coke Hazard. If you'll recall, a month ago we were here to outline the contract for the A&E. Just as a reminder, the project refers to the construction of a new city administrative office building that will be located north of the city-owned 8th and Dakota ramp, which is between 8th and 6th Streets. And the project also includes a parking lot, landscaping, a potential skywalk from the building to the ramp. The exhibits mentioned here will be prepared post-contract execution with the city's architect and construction manager mutually agreeing upon the program, budget, and schedule. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Karen Leonard, who will walk us through the contract phases.
Thank you, Sue. Welcome, Karen.
Good evening, Karen Leonard, Deputy City Attorney. I was involved in the drafting of this contract with Henry Carlson, and the contract is divided into 2 phases. As you can see, there's a pre-construction phase and a construction phase. During the pre-construction phase, the guaranteed maximum price will be developed, employing the following steps. As Sue mentioned, the program will be mutually agreed upon by the city, Coke Hazard, and Henry Carlson. And then the budget will be developed by the city in consultation with Coke Hazard and Henry Carlson. And then the schedule will be mutually agreed upon by city, Coke Hazard, and Henry Carlson. At that time, Coke Hazard will, as the architect, prepare schematic design documents in accordance with the program, budget, and schedule. And during this process, Henry Carlson will be asked to prepare a cost estimate for the work to confirm that the program and budget are in alignment. At that time, if they are not in alignment, the parties will have to meet to discuss and how to figure out how to stay within program and project budget. Once the schematic design documents are approved, Coke Hazard, as architect, will continue to prepare design development documents, and Henry Carlson will be preparing cost estimates as those are prepared. At the end of design development, it is that point where the guaranteed maximum price will be set. Phase 2 for construction commences upon the owner, the city, accepting Henry Carlson's guaranteed maximum price and fee proposal. And I will get into what the guaranteed maximum price is in later discussion. But at that point, we get into phase 2 of construction. And per contract documents, the construction manager at risk is the one who enters into contracts with the laborers, the subcontractors, and supplier contracts. And now the construction manager at risk for bids coming back in accordance with the guaranteed maximum of price that's been approved by the city. Those contracts will all be in the domain of the construction manager at risk. The construction manager at risk approach requires the construction manager to complete its portion of the project for no more than the guaranteed maximum price approved by the city. It also requires that any savings that result will be returned to the city if construction costs are less than the guaranteed maximum price. Also, it holds true that if the construction costs exceed the price of the GMP, that becomes a cost to Henry Carlson. Once the GMP is established, it is the maximum the city will pay for that portion of the project. Let's talk about what does guaranteed maximum price mean. It is determined upon completion of design development, and it has two elements. The guaranteed maximum price is the total cost of the work to construct the project, plus the construction manager's fee. Please keep in mind that the GMP is only one element of what will make up the city's project budget. The other elements could include the architect's fees, legal fees, furniture, fixture, and equipment, the owner rep fees, and other non-construction costs. What I just mentioned are not part of the GMP. Breaking that out further, the guaranteed maximum price will be decided at the end of design development, and the construction manager will develop its proposed price, and then it will be submitted to the city for approval as part of the city's budget. Also within the contract are construction conditions, and so prior to moving forward with any construction, the following construction conditions must be satisfied. Those are securing all the funds necessary to pay the cost of the project, including the sale of any bonds, the city's decision and its sole discretion to proceed with the project. The city would have to issue a notice to proceed with construction, and the owner would also have to approve the GMP and the construction manager fees. When we talk about the guaranteed maximum price, it is broken down into cost of work, and those include these four subcategories of labor costs, subcontract costs, costs of materials and equipment to complete the construction, and also costs of material and equipment such as temporary facilities and other related items. There are also miscellaneous costs as part of the work, and those are listed on the screen above you. They include your bonds, your sales and excise tax, building permits, etc. The construction manager fee is also part of the guaranteed maximum price, and during negotiation it was negotiated with Henry Carlson that they would be paid for pre-construction services, which is really the development of the guaranteed maximum price, a lump sum of $43,288. That was further broken down that they would receive a portion of that lump sum payment of 35% at the end of schematic design, and the remaining 65% at the end of design development. For phase 2 construction services, it was negotiated that Henry Carlson would receive 3.5% of the cost of work. Cost of work, you do not know yet today. That will be determined as schematic design is put together and as Henry Carlson meets with the owner to determine what the program and budget work out to be. At that time, you will be informed of what that cost of work will be, and the percentage will be converted to a fixed fee at the time of the guaranteed maximum price. Please also note that the contract does expressly state that we can terminate the contract should the council decide not to proceed with construction of the project. Once we agree upon the guaranteed maximum price, the city will have 2 contracts in place. Just so that you know, we have a contract in place with Coke Hazard, and if this goes through tonight, we'll have a contract in place with Henry Carlson. But through their contract, and once the GMP is set, then construction contracts will be entered into, but those will be entered into by Henry Carlson, and they are allowed under state law to go through a couple of approaches to enter into those contracts, such as the competitive bid or competitive proposals. But because it is a construction manager at risk, Henry Carlson is not required to competitively bid the project as if it were the city going out and doing the project itself. They do not have to meet all elements of state law, but they do comply with the competitive and competitive proposals under state law. The benefits of the construction manager at risk, and we've gone down this process with the event center and with the aquatic center, is that by using this methodology, that is, if project costs go over the guaranteed maximum price, it is not the city responsibility. If it goes under, the city will get the savings. At this time, I will turn this over to Tracy Turback to discuss the next steps.
Karen, thanks for the detail. Appreciate that. Tracy, welcome.
Good evening, Tracy Turback, thank you. If the resolution tonight is approved, then we'll have our construction manager, Henry Carlson Company, on board. We've got a couple that will nearly complete the team for the project. We've got a couple more agreements that will be coming forward next month that will, on the financing side of this, for our financial advisory services and bond counsel services. So those should be coming forward fairly soon. And with the construction manager and architect then on board, the schematic design process will be taking place over the next several months, so that in the first quarter of 2016, that schematic design then would be completed. And that's the point where we will pause, and you folks will have a chance to see what the project looks like, what it will cost, before you make a decision about moving forward with the project. And at that point, then by the end of first quarter of 16, at least, that's our target, the council would be asked to proceed with the project and to authorize the issuance of bonds. So that will be a key point in the process where the council has a very important decision to make. With that, before I open it up to questions, I do want to introduce Meredith Larson, the Vice President of Preconstruction Services with Henry Carlson Company is here, and I believe he'd like to address the council and make a few remarks before we open it up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Meredith, thank you for coming tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, my name is Meredith Larson. I'm with the Henry Carlson Company. I have some very brief remarks. Henry Carlson Company has been building Sioux Falls in South Dakota now for over 96 years. So when we learned that Henry Carlson was selected to be the CM for the City Administration Building, we were delighted. We've already attended several design meetings to better understand the project requirements, the schedule constraints, and the importance of the new facility to the delivery of services to the citizens of Sioux Falls. The City Administration Building project is important to Sioux Falls as our community grows. The project is also important to the Henry Carlson Company and the many local subcontractors that will become involved. A successful project not only reinforces our progressive community's commitment to support that growth, but also recognizes the design and construction talent here in Sioux Falls. Henry Carlson Company looks forward to providing future updates as we move forward. And thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council.
Meredith, thank you. We appreciate your words.
Okay.
Sue, is that it?
That's it for the presentation.
Okay, very good. Very good. Is there anybody in the audience who wanted to speak to this item? Welcome.
Bruce Danielson. I was here last month and we talked about the construction manager at risk process, and the architect was hired last month, and we go back and we look at the contract, and it's 85 pages, give or take, things that I haven't seen in with PowerPoint and so on. So there's been a few pages to go through, and I go back and ask the same question that I asked last month: is how many of you have actually read any of this? You might have sat in on a few meetings here or there, but have you really gone back and looked at it in how the event center project was done, and all the questions we have about the whole process with the event center? So I got a few questions here. I'm just going to read them off my page, and I apologize for this, but looking back on the event center project, was this contract approval that gave the administration the right to keep the information away from the council and the citizens? You know, we talk about transparency, and we have very little transparency. Is this the night you give up the hope of transparency on the building? Are you abdicating your duty to protect the citizens if you approve this? I like Henry Carlson Company. I've admired the work that they've done in the old Sioux Valley Hospital design and a lot of the things that they've done. I've known a lot of the people that have worked there, and in fact, I even bought a car from Henry one time. So, you know, they're good Sioux Falls people. And so I'm not throwing them under the bus on any of this. I'm throwing it back on this council to say, what do we really know about the construction manager at risk process? Don't you have a responsibility to ensure that there is maximum transparency? You know, have we learned nothing from the event center? Isn't the definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? How can there be, what's the estimated cost of this building? Surely the administration has some kind of number in mind. We've had some estimates, and then we find out that we don't have any money. There's a CIP that's supposed to have been some money put in, you know, set aside if this is to be built during the 5-year time period. Why doesn't anybody talk about what the general numbers have been? You know, if you're going to build a 45,000 square foot building or a 100,000 square foot building, you know that it's going to cost $100 a square foot or $200 a square foot or something. And we have no idea what's going to be done. Isn't there a danger that doing all this work and spending all this money before we even decide to build the building, and doesn't tonight make this a foregone conclusion that we're going to do it? You know, once you get a steamroller going, it's pretty hard to stand in front of it and not get squashed under it. Are we giving up transparency for the risk for risk reduction, or even worse possibility, just the illusion of risk reduction? Since the guaranteed maximum price is locked in so late in the process, is a contractor really at that much of a risk? Wouldn't it be foolish for a contractor to put themselves at a great risk? Do we really think they are that foolish? I don't think Henry Carlson is. Does the construction manager at risk model lock the public and the council out of the details? If this is an appropriate model to use for construction of buildings. Right now this is the third building that we're dealing with this on, and we haven't even done an audit yet on the first one that was done. I go back and ask, have you read the entire contract? If you were upset about the lack of transparency in the event center, shouldn't you demand changes in this contract? And then I go back and ask all of you here, you know, do you even care if there's transparency? Do you care if we know what's going on? Given the numerous exceptions in the South Dakota open records laws and the reliance on those exceptions by the administration to hide details about the event center, why would we feel secure that there's going to be any transparency with this building as the contract is currently written? Shouldn't the council demand explicit written guarantees in the contract to ensure transparency for the citizens? And isn't that your duty? You're the policy-making body for this government, and we're not seeing anything in anything that shows transparency. Will the council and the public have access to all the change orders? Were the audits on the change orders? We still haven't seen anything. Will the public and council be notified of any disputes that lead to mediation and given the results and details of such disputes once said disputes are resolved? You know, we just had some grand $1 million settlement that really doesn't look like much of a settlement when we really start putting everything together with it on the event center. We still haven't seen anything. Besides giving the mayor an opportunity for a victory lap right before his term expires, where did the proposed date of the completion come from? You know, what is the big deal about April 2018?
Mr. Dennison, you're at 5:15, sir.
Just a few more.
How about one more?
Well, okay, then I'll just summarize by saying, you know, what's different about this contract compared to the event center contract to ensure that we do not have a repeat of what we had before? No access to information regarding our building, denials of access to that information from the media, citizens, and by the taxpayers to the administration. Since we own the building, will you protect the citizens, taxpayers, your constituents?
Thank you. Folks, is there anybody else who want to engage the council on this topic? Welcome.
My name is Jeff Hazard. I'm with Koch Hazard Architects. Just a couple quick things. Number one, I would certainly argue that the event center was a highly successful project. I'm not sure what the definition of transparency is, but there's certain, it seemed to me that that was a reasonably transparent project. Secondly, the construction manager at risk is a highly effective, well-tested approach to project delivery, one that we've been involved in on probably 10 to 15, maybe 20 projects. And the beauty of that process is that you as the owner are creating a team, a design and construction team that is able to work together from the beginning of the project to create the most appropriate and effective project possible. So I certainly recommend that you approve Henry Carlson's contract. Thank you.
Mr. Hatcher, thanks for those comments. Appreciate it. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on this topic before I turn it over to them? Councilors? Councilor Jamison?
I have a question for Tracy and then one for Karen, if I could.
Tracy, Karen?
Tracy, forgive me if I've forgotten this, but do we have a guaranteed maximum price on the indoor pool?
Yes. Yes, we do.
When did we get that?
When did we get that? I guess I don't recall exactly when.
Karen, could you help Tracy with
does
that?
Karen know?
If my memory serves right, it would have been at the end of design development.
So it was before construction really
It
started?
was before construction started.
Okay, very good. And then Karen, if you could, so.
Karen? Good job. Thanks for helping out Tracy.
That never happens.
So, first, let me state that I think Henry Carlson, Coke Hazard, the city of Sioux Falls are all entering into this agreement with the best of intentions. Please don't take anything different than that. The question is about transparency a little bit in that once you do decide on that price, that we're going to borrow $24 million, whatever it might be, that's really where the city kind of, I'm sorry, I won't say a number. I really didn't mean to start a fuss.
No, you just said a number.
Well, I know I did, and that's wrong. I don't want to do that.
That's the first time that a number has ever been said. The first time.
When we come up with a number.
Thank you.
So I stand corrected, please. Please hold that. When we come up with a number, it's really the point where the city says, in a council, we're willing to borrow that amount of money to build this building, to satisfy this need, to do all the things that we want it to do. That's really at the end of our day what we've committed to and voted yes or no to do. Beyond that, it kind of turns to project managers and others to kind of make it happen. And so one of the things that I think we get sometimes confused about is that if you're building something and you have a chance to save money, you generally try to save money. But in this case, you're kind of committing to the idea that it's going to cost you what you've agreed to spend. And so my question is, and we could talk about this later too if it can't get worked out now, but let's just say the contractor says to a subcontractor, we need you to do this for less because we need to save some money because things are getting out of hand. Subcontractor says, yes, we will, thank you. We'll do it this way to save you money. How do we know that the contractor then really reports that savings back to the city? Is there a way? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, before the subcontractor's ever hired, they consult with the city to let us know what their intentions are and what those prices are. Pay apps come into the city, and I may be talking out of my skill set, but the pay apps will come into the city and we'll understand what was paid out to them. So the city is part of a team approach, as Mr. Hazard suggested, that we're all working together as a team and we talk about what's happening. It's not that they are going out and entering into contracts without the city's knowledge ahead of time, if that helps. And then also there's contingencies involved, so that I do know on the event center there were project savings, and we were able to have alternate lists that got bumped up into priority that we could add things in to the event center based on bids coming in lower than anticipated. So that helps you prioritize things differently and move things up the ladder so you can get even more nicer finishes or whatever your goals are met and satisfied. Does that help?
Yep.
And I can certainly turn to Meredith too if you want to add any questions or answers to that too.
Meredith, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Jamison, the difference between competitive bid and construction manager at risk is that all of the numbers that we develop in conjunction with our subcontractors are available to the city, the architect, prior to development of the guaranteed maximum price, and then during construction, anytime there's a change, whether it involves fewer dollars or more dollars, we bring the actual proposals from the subcontractors back to the city and the architect, and they're reviewed before any decision is made. If it's competitive bid, the contractor's incentive is to hold those cards pretty close and not display or let the owner know if there was a savings after the bid or whatever. In the construction manager process, it's all open book, and we'll be generating monthly reports for the city, and hopefully you'll get a chance to see those where we track not only the dollars, but also where we're at in terms of schedule and the milestones and how things are progressing. So does that answer the question?
I think it does. I think it's been helpful. Honestly, I am really just trying to understand this process from a counselor's position. You know, I'm not representing the city. I am not the guy who is going to see all of the details.
True.
But I want to understand my perspective from my position, and so.
Yeah, the Henry Carlson Company is a $60 to $80 million a year general contractor, and in any given year, 90% of the work we do is construction manager at risk. And we found that our clients, and you know, obviously the Sanford healthcare system, now the state engineer's office is transitioned to construction manager at risk too, because they do have the benefit of seeing all of that information weekly, every 2 weeks, every month, whatever you choose. Okay.
Meredith, thank you. And Councilor Jamison, my apologies to you. The only reason I interrupted you, the only one, was because of you said a number, and I truly apologize. It had nothing to do with you questioning the process. It's just that the administration on this particular project, because of lessons learned, as well as the city council on this project, because of lessons learned, has been very, very careful not to ever mention a number for fear that it would be utilized in just any way, shape, or form. And so I think for the purposes, I don't want to speak on your behalf. In fact, I will turn it over to you, Councilor Jamison.
Yes, please, let the record be struck that Jamison spoke those words. I agree. I understand your position and your concerns. So it was only an example. So.
No, very good. I respect that 100%. Thank you. Councilor Rolfing.
I was going to say something about that, but I'll preclude that. I will go to Tracy, though, and ask him. It looks to me on the presentation that you guys have made that the bonds need to be secured and purchased before construction begins. Is that correct?
That's the intention, yes. Yeah, we have to have the money in order to enter into the
We
contract.
have to have some of the money. We don't have to have all the money and have it sitting around for a year while this building, or a year or more while this building is being purchased. Or do we have to go out and purchase them all at one time?
That would certainly be the intention, yes. Okay. We only have, in the 2016 city budget, we've got $250,000 budgeted for this project. That's really intended to be used for some of these preliminary costs, whether it's for architectural services, some of the pre-construction costs. So before we enter into a contract or execute the phase 2 of the construction manager's contract, where we're going to be spending the money to actually start construction, we need to have those dollars secure.
Okay, but we generally are paying much less than half of that. I'm just thinking if we could borrow half of it to start and then you know, toward the end of it, we borrow the other half to save some money. But if we can, if that's probably not typically done, I'm sure it's just an idea.
Well, and that is something we can certainly take a look at. One of the things we would typically do at the very outset is to get a projected draw schedule from Henry Carlson to get an idea of how quickly they expect to spend that money down, and then we can consult with our financial advisor to see is there justification really to do it as you're proposing, or does it make more sense to go through that bond sale process one time rather than two, because there are costs associated with that as well.
Exactly, right. One last thing to address some of the concern. Don't we, Karen, don't we have Tegra working on this kind of project with us as a safeguard to watch all the numbers?
Good job.
We hire an outside?
Yes, and that was one thing we failed to mention, that we did have Nate Pearson from Tegra, and Dick Strasberg was also available to answer questions from Tegra, so they've been very helpful consulting in negotiating the contract, and they are kind of our eyes in the field, and they know where to draft good, tight contract language.
Councilor Erickson.
I just have a couple questions, probably for you, Karen. I'm sorry. We've talked about contingencies on other projects such as the event center and the indoor aquatic center, and I know that this is a much different project. Will there be a contingency fund held to the side, and if so, how much? And then I'm also just curious, I know this is a minor detail, but it can certainly add in there. Will the furnishings also be included into a price, or is that something down the road?
Well, to answer the second part of your question, furniture, fixtures, and equipments are outside the guaranteed maximum price, so that would be part of the overall project budget, but not part of the GMP.
Okay.
Okay.
And we'll get both of those prices. So,
Yes.
for example, we'll get A for GMP, and we'll get B for the total shebang of everything.
Right, and the city team will be doing the FF&E, and so we need to be working with Henry Carlson in their schedule on when we need to get those pricing done. As for your first question on contingencies, we don't know the cost of the building yet, so I can't tell you what that dollar amount is going to be, because we really have to vet that out further with our architect and construction manager. But yes, all contracts have contingencies to them. Can I get you that answer tomorrow? I know that there's a number in there, but
I don't need a
have
number.
it
I just was
memorized.
curious as far as
There's a percentage, I mean.
Yeah, you'll hold a certain percentage back for that. That I don't need the number.
Yeah, I just don't remember what that percentage is.
Thank you.
Good job. Councilor Kiley.
This is an important, really, second step in getting the information to this council that they have requested and many others have requested, and that is the price of this building. And not only will it be a price, but it's going to be a guaranteed price. Anything that, if it should ever happen to go over, that's not the responsibility of the city. If it does go under, the savings is realized by the city. So it's a process that has proven to be beneficial to previous projects that the city has been engaged in, but numerous projects that Coke Hazard and Henry Carlson have been engaged in addition to what the city has. The team concept is very important in not only does it help to establish a guaranteed maximum price, but probably the most efficient price that can be realized as well because of the collaboration and the teamwork that exists. And throughout this selection process, for instance, when we selected the Henry Carlson Company, there was a presentation on 3D, 4D, 5D software that I didn't even know existed, but that can be utilized along with the addition of the design team to illustrate, for instance, running electrical and plumbing through support work, and whether it's even going to work in reality versus concept. And so realizing that there could be difficulty and then changing design before you actually get into the process, and which saves labor time, material time, and then obviously construction time, so that you stay keep the project
on schedule. So there's a realization of savings just there in itself. So I'm convinced this is the proper approach to take. And I think that we have put together the best team that we possibly can here. And I would just urge your approval.
Would anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second, Rolfing.
Councilor Kiley's made a motion to approve this resolution, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karsky.
Yes.
Kiley.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
That is passed 7-0. Thank you, Council. Item 4.